So, good morning, everybody. Today's class is entitled Passover. And I wanted to really start off with asking you, what does Pesach mean to you? What do you feel about Pesach? What are your feelings on Pesach? Share a little bit. It could be a memory, it could be a thought, anything about Pesach. What does it mean to you?
No matter where we are, before or after Pesach, the whole family comes together and everyone sleeps over. It's just a wonderful time to go through the Seder story and be together. It's magical.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Does anybody else want to share?
That's similar. I mean, it's also, it feels very grounding, because we have to remember what the holiday is about. And when we do, it is grounding, because we look around and see how much we have and how much freedom we have. And sometimes it's disappointing, because I say, what have I done with this freedom? It's not enough, and I get that extra push to maybe be motivated to do something more meaningful.
That's beautiful. I'm actually was going to share this at the end of the class, but because you brought that up, you said you feel that sometimes you're not doing enough, or is it me, right? Is that what you just kind of said?
Yeah.
So there's a beautiful thing, the 15 steps of the Seder are also 15 steps in therapy or psychological insights into ourselves and how we can deal with things in our lives. And the last step is called nirtza. Nirtza means acceptance. God has accepted your Seder. God has accepted all the things you did throughout the night. It's good. When the parent says to the child, the teacher says to the student, you did good. And the question is really, why? What is the step exactly? But the question is not really, has God accepted our Seder? We know God has accepted our Seder and everything we prayed and did that night. The question is, do you accept your Seder? Do you accept yourself? Do you accept your offering? Do you feel you're good enough? Because many times, we're always, especially as Jewish mothers, it's called the guilt, the Jewish guilt. Like my joke is, what's Jewish Alzheimer's? You forget everything but the guilt. We're always guilty. Did I do enough? Am I doing enough? Can I do enough? Why didn't I say this? Why didn't I do that? Why didn't I tell my child this? B'nirtza is at the end of your Seder, you have to tell yourself, I tried my best. I did my best. You could always do better, but I did good. Accept yourself for who you are. That's the final step of the Seder. So I did the end before the beginning, but maybe that's good.
That is good.
Because, and I call myself Mrs. Guilt. I'm always feeling guilty. The Yiddish mama. I worry and I feel guilty. My mother calls me, Ma, what are you worrying about today? She knows I'm a worrier. So she makes a joke. What are you worrying about today? And I always say, Ma, I inherited my worrying from you. You always worried. So anyway, so let's start. Very interesting insight that Passover has 3 names to call the holiday. Anybody know the names? The traditional name, Pesach. Pesach. Did you get schmaltz, Diane, for Pesach? Did you buy your brisket for Pesach? Did you get your chopped liver for Pesach? Pesach, everybody calls it Pesach. But yet, if you look into the Torah, it's called Chag HaMatzot, the holiday of matzah. So God calls it the holiday of matzah. Then, generations later, after the story of Mitzrayim, the men of the Great Assembly, the Anshe Knesset Hagdolah, called it Zaman Cheruseinu, the holiday of freedom. And then we call it Pesach. So which one is it? Is it all 3? Why do we have 3 names? And why at the end of the day do we call it Pesach? Why is that the universal accepted name among Jews? And there's some beautiful insights. One of them I love is it really defines relationships. When God calls the holiday, God calls it the holiday of matzahs because he's highlighting the virtues of the Jewish people. God being the husband in the relationship, the groom, we, the Jewish people, are the bride. Our husband is extolling our virtues. You know, when your husband says, my wife makes a Pesach Seder like no one else. Her matzah balls, her knedlach, her brisket, no one makes like my wife a brisket. That's what Ken tells Diane. No one makes like Diane. I'll tell you, no one. So God is remembering the Jewish people that they rushed to leave Egypt. They rushed to follow God, so to speak, to make matzahs. They made matzahs quickly, and they ran out following God's directives. So that's why it's called the bread of faith, because the Jews followed, believed in God, and went out of Egypt to get the Torah at Sinai. So God is highlighting our virtues. Look what the Jewish people did. Everything I told them. They didn't even wait for the dough to rise. They followed me out of Egypt to do the will of God, to accept my Torah. So God is highlighting our virtues. Now we, the bride, the wife, we're highlighting our husband's virtues, God's. We said Chag Pesach, the holiday of Passover. By the 10th final plague, God kills, remember, the firstborn of every Egyptian family. But the Jewish homes, God passed over, right? God did not allow any Jewish person to pass away during that plague. God protected us from that plague and all the plagues. So we're highlighting the fact that God saved us. So we're extolling the virtues of our husband. And God is extolling the virtues of his wife, the Jewish people. And in a relationship, you have to extol your partner. Look at my husband. What a wonderful guy. I came home late from work. The kids were in bed. The laundry was done and sandwiches were made for tomorrow morning. What a husband I have. And the husband comes home and says, what a wife I had. Her slippers were by the door. That's a little bit much. The slippers were by the door. My dinner was hot on the table, even with a folded napkin. You know, when I was a newlywed, I would set the table every night. A tablecloth, 2 settings, glassware, beautiful. So my plumber came to repair something. He looks at the table. He says to me, you having a party tonight? And I'm like, no. So he says, so why is the table set? I said, because my husband is coming home. He said, wow. Wow, he says to me. Don't worry, the table is no longer set every night. You know, I'm no angel. Anyway, so we extol the virtue of our partner. The 2 names, Chag Matzos and Chag Pesach, is showing us how each one highlights the attributes of the other. And Zeman Chereseinu is kind of the neutral name, the holiday of freedom, which the men of the Great Assembly established. So we have 3 names. But again, Pesach is the name we use because we are always realizing how God is such a great partner in life. It constantly reminds us of the Passover. The Passover. Does anybody want to say anything, add anything, debate?
Yes, well, this is silly, but I made some dog bowl for during Passover to keep it separate. And the writing on it said, don't pass over me to the dog. Sorry. Can't help it. How to share.
That's very cute. That's very cute. So yeah, I always hang up signs. Do not touch Pesach. Do not touch. Clean for Pesach. You know, a few years ago, I made a rule, no food upstairs. I don't want to have to clean every bedroom and every closet for Pesach anymore. I'm an old lady. I have no strength.
Enough. Yeah. No.
So the kids, But if one of the children does bring up snacks to their room, they are required to vacuum and clean their room. I made that rule. So it's amazing because it's such less cleaning now. So now it's a very interesting, the Haggadah starts off in a very interesting passage. Good morning, Margaret. Good morning. Whoever is hungry, let him come and eat. Whoever is in need, let him come and conduct the Seder of Pesach. Now you're sitting at the Seder, you open your Haggadah, and you're saying, whoever wants to come, come. Now let me ask you, when you invite guests for Pesach, you tell them at the Seder? Or you call them, send them an email, send them, if you're fancy, you send a paperless post with gold trim. I hereby cordially invite you to the Sklar Passover Seder. You're sitting at the Seder, then you invite guests. What is this all about? Anybody have an idea? Remember that we said that the Seder is not only a religious, let's say, ceremony, prayer service, and bench, you eat and you bless, right? The Seder is a journey. It's a journey of the soul. It's a journey of the emotions. It's a journey of the mind. And basically, the Kabbalah explains you're talking to yourself. You're putting yourself into a positive mindset. Many times you show up at an event, a party, a dinner, a family simcha, and you're like, not in a good mood. Why did I have to schlep 4 hours for Joey's bar mitzvah? Look at the cocktails. They didn't even give a rugala to eat. They didn't even put out a nice Franken blank. You have to come into the Seder with a positive mindset. Not, when is it going to be over already? When are they going to have the meal? This is so tedious. Uncle Irving doesn't stop talking. Enough with the rabbi's explanations. Get me out of here. You come into the Seder and you invite yourself. You put yourself into a mindset. I'm going to enjoy this evening. I'm going to get involved in the Seder. I'm going to tap into that energy. You're going to have manicures, a beautiful dress, cough your hair. Did I say that? Cough your hair. And make sure that someone else is in the kitchen. Hire someone for the night. You should be at the Seder table. What's with the mothers in the kitchen during the Seder? Send the husband into the kitchen. You should be at the Seder with everyone else. No mixing and stirring the soups and the kichlach. Everything, let someone else do it or pre-prep. But you should be at the Seder physically and also mentally. Physically and also mentally. So that's what it means. Invite yourself to the Seder. And make sure you're present. Because sometimes, you're there, but you're not there. What did you say? Oh, I'm sorry. What were you thinking? Oh, okay. So this is what it means. That you want to be part of the whole journey. So I want to share a few little insights about the Seder. And then I would like to also discuss if anybody has questions, how can I make my house Pesach? And does God really care if there's a crumb, I always say, between my cushions? Does God really care if there's a kichel under my china closet? What's the big deal? Why do we make such a big to-do? We get new dishes, or we get new cutlery, and we kasher the sinks, and we cover the counters, and we buy kosher for Passover items only, and everything else gets locked away, and then we sell the chametz to the rabbi. I'm not such a holy roller. Do I have to sell my chametz to the rabbi? Is he going to come and take my chametz when I'm not there? Because, you're actually selling away your chametz dishes and your chametz pots. I never heard of any rabbi claiming someone's dishes, pots, and pans, so don't worry. First of all, the rabbi takes the forms and he sells it to a non-Jew for the 8 days of Pesach. And the reason you sell your chametz, even if you're not what we call ultra religious, is at least you're not having possession of your chametz in your home. At least you have said, listen, I sold my chametz. I don't know if I'm going to be so strict, but at least you sold it so you're not liable for having chametz in your house on Passover. So that's why do it even if you're not such a holy roller. So we sell the chametz before Pesach to the rabbi. If you want online, our shul, BethIsraelChabad.org, has the chametz form. You fill it out for your home, your summer home, your office, if you own an office or you have an office. And then you know that for the 8 days of Pesach, you're not liable for the chametz you own because you sold it. And about an hour after Pesach is over, my husband's fellow, who we use, a very good person, sells it back to my husband or any other rabbi that does it. And then you can now open up your cabinets and take out your Cheerios, your Rice Krispies, and your secret bars you hid away. And all your dishes, pots and pans and so on. Okay. So we sit down at the Seder and there's all these symbolic foods. Now, one of them is very famous, and that's the bitter herbs called maror. Whether you buy it in a jar or you grind it yourself, it's on the Seder plate, and it's part of the Hillel sandwich. We also have a part where we eat maror wrapped in romaine lettuce. But what's the question of maror? So you're saying, why do we eat maror? Who knows? What's the symbolism? Why do we have bitter herbs on our plates? Please, don't be shy.
To remind us of bitter times that we went through as a people.
Right, very good. And it says the mitzvah to eat maror is what allowed the Jewish people to become free. Because remember, right before they left Egypt, what did God say? Eat the Passover lamb, they had a barbecue. And with that, God said matzah and maror. That's what they ate the first night before they left Egypt. But let me ask you a question now. The maror, as Diane just said, reminds us of the bitter life in Egypt, right? They were slaves, they were tortured. You have the anniversary of your freedom from slavery, from the concentration camp. Do you really need to be given maror? Remember the bitter, miserable time you had in the concentration camp. Remember the bitter, miserable time as slaves in Egypt. Are we really a people that harp on the misery, or do we try to move forward? What are your feelings on this?
Did they really have horseradish in Israel?
No, in Egypt.
Or
Yeah.
was it something else in Egypt?
Yeah, just like they had the lamb. Horseradishes. Yeah. It's a. Also, by the way, that's a very good question. Let me tell you what I found out. There are 4 types of vegetables that we can use as our maror. Let me read them to you. Okay, I circled it. Let me just find it quickly, because while you said that, that's a very interesting. So while we talk, I'll find it. But anybody else have an insight?
Well, it's human nature to forget, but also generations later on that we don't remember that. I mean, we weren't physically there.
Very good. Very good. It's generations later. We didn't actually experience Egypt. We didn't, or God forbid, other Holocausts. Thank God we were Americans, most of us. We're born free. So you're saying to remember, very good. But remember also the deeper insight, the Kabbalistic insight, that the Seder is a journey of the emotional, psychological psyche. Now, God is giving us already from before we leave Egypt how to deal with pain, bitterness, anger, disappointment. Not to shove it under the rug. Not to say it's going to go away, because it never goes away. It always comes back to haunt you when you're an angry person. God says you have to deal with your pain. You'd have to deal with your anger, your resentment. You have to confront it. Don't let it become the focus of your life. What happens was when the Jews left Egypt by eating maror, they took it and they transformed their pain. Pain has to be confronted in life. So by eating maror, it's symbolic of confronting why am I always angry? You ever felt that you're walking around angry? Like I was once walking around the house and one of my family members said, "Why do you look angry, man?" I didn't even realize I looked angry, but I felt angry. You need to confront why was I angry that day? And I remembered, then I sat down, I'm like, yeah, why am I angry? So God is teaching us a very, very beautiful thing. When you feel anger, pain, resentment, don't shove it under the rug. Let's forget about it. It's going to go away. Sometimes it does go away. You can't say that everything is psychological trauma in your life, right? To confront your pain. Eat your maror. Don't hide it away. You know, if something's bothering you, somebody did something to you, speak to them about it. Because you know, anger hurts you more than the other person you're angry at. You're festering and they don't even know you're angry, or they don't care that you're angry. It doesn't affect them. So this is why we eat maror on a deeper level. My husband and my father always said something so nice. You know, in my house, my father would give out all the different steps. So let's say it was time to eat the karpas, right, the vegetable and salt. My father would dip and give it to me. At time to eat the hillel sandwich, my father would make me a sandwich and give it to me. And my father always, for me and my mother and my sister, wouldn't put in any maror. He would put in charoset, matzah, and romaine lettuce. So my mother used to say to him every Seder, Gershon, my father's name Gershon, excuse me for the disrespect, you didn't put in any maror. He says in Yiddish, women don't need maror. He told my mother, women don't need maror. Yeah, no need for you to have bitter herbs. He would tell my mother. And my husband also, he wouldn't give me any maror. I'm like, Shia, I'm supposed to taste a little of the bitterness? And my husband would laugh. So yeah, you could eat maror. So that was my father's thing. Women don't need maror. They don't need to feel bitterness, he would say. My father was like a very gentleman type. Like he would always say, women don't need to suffer, but we should taste maror because we're like, it's part of the tradition. So maror allows us to challenge ourselves and say, what is really bothering me? Confront it. And if you look at the Seder plate, there's also romaine lettuce. Romaine lettuce is considered a bitter herb. That's why the hillel sandwich is a piece of matzah, romaine lettuce, maror charoset, another piece of lettuce, and another piece of matzah. Okay, that's how you make a hillel sandwich. So my question is, why romaine lettuce is maror? I may eat lettuce in my salads. It's not bitter. But if you're a horticulturist or you work in agriculture, you'll know that if you leave romaine lettuce in the earth too long, it becomes, I don't know what this is popping up. It becomes bitter. So romaine lettuce, if left in the ground too long, becomes a form of bitter herb. It tastes bitter. I bought romaine lettuce and I bit off a stem and it was bitter. So romaine lettuce is considered a type of maror. And remember, I told you there's 4 things you can use for maror: romaine lettuce, endives, horseradish, date, ivy, and wormwood. These are all acceptable forms of maror. One year you couldn't get romaine lettuce when I was a girl. We all bought endives, which they have a very bitter taste. I didn't enjoy it. We couldn't get romaine lettuce. There was some kind of infestation or breakout of bacteria, and you could not get romaine lettuce that Pesach. So all the kosher grocery fruit markets were selling endives. So I don't know what wormwood is, date ivy, but these are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things you can use as maror, as documented in the rabbinic texts. So romaine lettuce, let's go back to why I'm speaking about romaine lettuce, is the longer it sits in the ground, the more bitter. Now, romaine lettuce is also symbolic of how the Jews became enslaved. It didn't start off where Paro arrested all the Jews, put them in chains, and said, build me my pyramids. It all started with slowly. He had a help wanted ad, needed architects, construction managers, builders, and people signed up for great pay. And slowly but surely, the pay diminished. He wouldn't let them go home. And finally, he shackled them. So it was a step-by-step process of enslavement. And by the way, Hitler, may his name be erased, did the same thing. He started slowly taking away the privileges of the Jewish people. Why? He knew that if he right away announces all Jews need to be eradicated, we would have fought back. We would have formed an army immediately. Over the years, he set it up that Jews became, were able to, couldn't fight back. He did it slowly but surely. People didn't even know what was going on before it was too late. And that's all things that happen in life, the Torah tells us. Nothing happens in 1 second, unless it's a tsunami or a hurricane or a tornado. Nothing happens in a second. It's all a step-by-step process. When relationships break down, when estrangements happen, it didn't happen in 1 minute. Over the time, you ignored confrontation, you ignored what was going on in your life, and before you know it, your bridge collapsed under you. The floor came out from under you, the expression. I forgot the expression. So nothing breaks down in a second. So the trick is, says the Torah, says the Kabbalah, to look out for the signs so that you can put a stop to it. If there's a crack in the wall and the builder says, your foundation is going to crumble, as it happened in Surfside, Florida, where a building collapsed, they ignored the warnings of the inspectors. They didn't want to spend a few $1 million to repair the damage. Yeah, the whole building collapsed and everyone passed away. It was horrible. The trick is when the crack appears is when you should stump and stop it, fix it, repair the relationship. Not after it crumbles. Then it's bitter herbs. It's murder. It's too late. You're a slave. So this is what the Torah is saying. The romaine lettuce reminds us, you leave it too long, it's going to be bitter. You have to go, when you see a problem, nip it in the bud. Don't let it fester. Sometimes it's uncomfortable to confront a situation. Say, this is not working for me. I cannot work under these circumstances anymore. Or this is not working for me. We've got to do something about it. We need to speak to a professional. And many other instances. People they know their child is in danger and they don't go till it's too late. They see the child is something suffering. And then the child takes their life and then it's too late. Why didn't I look at the signs? Why didn't I notice that my child was acting in this very peculiar way? So there's so many times that we have regrets because we didn't look for the signs. So that's what the romaine lettuce and the maror on the Seder plate teaches us. Don't wait that it's left in the ground for so long that it turns into bitterness and then it's too late. So everything on the Seder plate is kind of like an insight into life, how to deal with life, how to look at life, and how to confront things in our lives. And hopefully none of these things relate to us, but everybody has something. We all go through moments in our lives, I'm looking to see what else is a very beautiful, interesting insight. Before we go to the 4 children, which I love. Everything about the 4 children excites me. So first of all, does anybody want to share anything as we're going through the different Seder insights and so on? Does anybody want to share anything? Anybody? Before we move on, I want to get a little class involvement. What's your favorite part of the Seder? I know you're going to say the meal. Tell me what's your favorite step of the Seder, of the 15 step therapeutic steps? Pardon? Margaret, you have to.
On the class, Kenny.
Diane, you were saying?
So sorry, there's too much going on.
Jane, I think she's cut off.
I'm sorry.
What's your favorite? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jane.
Diane, when you come back,
Diane, you wanted to say something?
No.
Yes. It's easy, but one of my favorite parts of the Seder is when I've done all the work before people sit down and I see my table all set and perfect and waiting. So when everyone comes in, they get that feeling. I like that part.
That's beautiful. Send us a picture. Put a picture on Facebook. I'd love to see a Seder table. Tablescapes.
Can you turn this low?
The tablescapes people make are just beautiful. My daughter Chani Stone, who runs the Young Jewish Professionals, and we have, so the way the Shul community Seders go is it's all done together, but half the section is the Young Jewish Professionals. So they sit with Chani and Levi. And the old Jewish professionals sit on my side with myself and my husband. You know, we mingle during dessert and during the course, everybody chats and meets each other. It's a lot of fun, our Seders. But Chani is an expert on tablescapes. Her table, she sets up the Seder at the Shul. I set the table, but then she comes in and just something magical happens. A flower here, a bowl here, and suddenly like, whoa. So yeah, some people make beautiful tablescapes. So Jane, what's your favorite part?
well, my table is never perfect. So I am happy when everybody sits down and somebody spills something so I could feel like we're getting going here. And everybody is together and we say the Kiddush and it's like, okay, we're calm, we're starting. And of course, I always love the 4 questions. And of course, I love the Afikomen when the kids get excited and to look for the matzah and Eliyahu. I love Eliyahu. I don't know why. I just always, last year we were going to have, we live in a condo now and another resident had their grandchildren there. So I tried to organize where we'd open the door at the same time and sing Eliyahu all at the same time. So we'd all hear it and the kids would hear other kids doing the same thing at the same time. So it didn't work last year, maybe this year, we'll try. But I love that
idea. What a beautiful idea.
Jane, that's beautiful. Jane, oh my goodness, I love that.
Because, they're here and they don't know that other people are doing it necessarily. They're young and because of COVID and everything. And also, I always have this goal of dressing the kids up in costumes and acting it out with them. So I have another year or 2 to go with that before it happens. But that's my thoughts sometimes.
Love it. What about you, Margaret? What's your favorite part of the Seder?
I was going to say putting it all together and the table before it starts. But I mean, we just have Jake and Kelsey, and it's fun to prepare things with them too. I guess also thinking about what you've said and trying to incorporate it into the Seder every time. I try to remember what you've said.
Yeah, something new we learned from Freida. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very interesting that you need to make your Seder not be tedious. Move it along. If you feel that you need to move it along, you move it along and get to the meal. And then I always say, and then you could go make all your speeches. That's why our Shul Seders, we move it along. And also I have a little secret I do is I serve the first course after Karpas because there's a lot of children, a lot of guests, and they may not enjoy the Seder if they didn't have a little bite. So in my house, by the way, 4 o'clock, I put out a light dinner, chicken, mashed potatoes, a piece of gefilte. Why? The Seder doesn't start early because it has to start at nightfall. It's not Pesach yet. And then the second night, it has to start when it's the second night, which is like 8:30 p.m. Otherwise, it's not the second day of Pesach, according to Jewish law. So everyone is going to come to the Seder grumpy and starving? No, thank you. And there's a lot of us. Could be, imagine one grump is one thing, but 11 grumps and their spouses and children, it's like a whole nation. So
Well,
my
sometimes people eat the eggs, right? You can have eggs on the table, people can eat.
Yeah, so no, what I was saying, so the custom is actually, this is an interesting custom. I'm saying custom because I want people to know when it's a law and when it's a custom. Custom is, so Wednesday afternoon is, Wednesday night is the Seder. Is a custom Wednesday, you don't eat the Simone HaSeder, what's going to be on your Seder. So it's unique and special. So you don't eat matzah Wednesday afternoon. You don't eat romaine lettuce. You don't eat eggs. You don't eat moror. You don't eat karoset. You don't eat the things that are going to be part of the Seder rituals. You that's why I said I put out chicken, baked mashed potatoes, and maybe some gefilte fish, and like maybe stuff like that. They can take tomatoes, cucumbers, but not romaine lettuce. Or like what's in the charosa. So I don't give out apples. I don't give out nuts. All right, big deal. What I'm saying is so that the Seder foods become like special. Oh, I already ate maror Tuesday afternoon. I already ate charosas Monday afternoon. You save it for the Seder. So why? Again, you don't, practical mama common sense, you don't want grumpy people. You don't want grumps. Everyone is happy. And then they eat less maybe at the meal, but who cares? They were fine. So that's why always at our shul Seder, I know people come hungry. They don't necessarily have mothers that tell them, go eat something. The Seder is going to end at 8:30, go put on your scarf. It's too cold outside. They don't have the Yiddish mama telling them. So at our Seder, after we wash for the vegetable, I kind of have the waitress give out a little piece of fish for the people that don't want to wait. And there's always dips on the table. This is just my Freida Hecht. This has nothing to do with law or custom. This is my shtick. And any child at the Seder, at our public Seder, I told the waitress to go around to the children and say, do you want a drumstick? Do you want a bowl of soup? So the children at the Seder are happy. They're also not starving because the mother didn't realize that you should give your child dinner at 5 o'clock and not wait till 7:30, 8 o'clock for dinner when your child is going to have a meltdown. So we do that to anticipate that people should enjoy the Seder. They should enjoy it. There's no mitzvah not enjoying your Seder. That's another, like a balabusta tip. Feed the family. Make a little extra chicken and feed the family, because one lady said, how could I feed the family before Pesach? They make a mess. I'm like, so they make a mess. Clean it up. Big deal. You'll have happier people at the table. So we were saying what we enjoy about the Seder. I also want to share, I love the part when we open the door for Elijah the prophet, and you go to the door with 2 candles from the Yontif table, and everyone prays, says a special prayer, and you can ask Elijah for whatever you need. It's a beautiful night, part of the night. I love it. One of my favorite times. And when I was a kid, we would fill Elijah's cup, which was the biggest cup in the table, and my uncles would shake the table and say, look, Freida, Elijah's drinking. And I believe them. And I do the same with my grandchildren. I shake the table a little bit. I'm like, look, he's drinking. And then there's a beautiful custom at the end of the Seder, the wine. What do you do with the wine from Elijah's cup? Pour it into a wine bottle and use it over the year. It's holy wine. He drank from it. So think about it. It's a beautiful thing. So in my house, at the end of the Seder, my husband sings Eliyahu HaNavi, Eliyahu HaNavi, and he pours it into a bottle of wine, an empty bottle, and we label it Elijah's wine, and we use it. So it's like a special wine. How much is it? I mean, it's a little bit. So that's another beautiful thing we do in our family. It's just a little custom. Jane mentioned Afikomen. I want to share something Afikomen, and then we'll go to the 4 children, because the 4 children are very fascinating. You know what? I'm going to mention it as part of the 4 children, actually. So you have 4 children at the Seder, right? The wise one, the contrary one, the apathetic one, and the simple one. Different names are given for the 4 children. And the question is, notice the Seder is all about the children, right? The children ask the 4 questions, and it says in the Code of Jewish Law, run home Wednesday night, the first night of Seder, run home right after shul. Don't dawdle, don't chat with your friends. Start the Seder right away. Why? So the children should remain awake. And a lot of the different strange things we do is to excite the children. You dip to excite the children. You drink to excite everything is to excite the children. What happens if you have no children or your children are grown up? Has the Seder become a moot point, being it's all for the children, right? And maybe adults might sometimes feel, well, everything's for the children. What about for me? Sometimes we feel a little resentful. We might. But the answer, the Kabbalah teaches us, the 4 children of the Seder. It says, "V'higadeta lebincha," teach it to your children. All this is not only talking about children who are young in age, children who are still in diapers. It's talking about you. You are a child. Every one of us is a child. We were born from parents. And more than that, we are God's children. So when we're talking about the 4 children at the Seder table and the 4 questions of these children, it's not only 4 questions of minors, M-I-N-O-R, under 21. It's you, the child, is asking God, your father, why? Why am I doing this? Why am I doing that? We are questioning God, our Father. We're asking God the 4 questions. And more than that, remember we said that the Seder is a psychological, emotional, spiritual journey, is how does a person find themselves again? When you're in therapy and you feel lost or you're going through anything in life, the therapist will always say, we have to go back in time to when you were an innocent, pure, happy, smiling, content person. You have to go back, strip away all the layers that were piled on and causes you all the burdens and pains and traumas. Start peeling away the layers and find that time in your life when you were a happy child. As Freud said, when you find your id, the Haggadah is saying find that happy place when you were like a child. That's what you need to go back to and then start from scratch. Sometimes you have to give up everything in life and go back to where you started, pure, innocent, happy, content, before everything happened to you, before life happened and you lived your life and everything piled on and you became burdened down with everything in your life. Go back to when you were a child. And when the Manishtana, you ask the Manishtana too. You'll notice at every Seder, when I grew up, we all asked the Manishtana. We're all children. It wasn't only the youngest son or the youngest daughter. At my father's Seder, everyone would ask the Manishtana. Even when I got married, before I moved to Connecticut, I was married. I lived like 2-3 years in New York. I would go to my parents for Pesach. My father would call on me to ask the 4 kashas in Yiddish. And when I said, Tata, ich will ba dir fragen de 4 kashas, because we said it in Yiddish and Hebrew and Yiddish, I felt such a happiness because I felt like I was a child on my father's lap again. Even I was a married lady. It brought to me such a warmth and love and feeling of being protected that every time I sat at my father's table, again, I had 2 children, married, I felt a certain protectiveness of being a child of a parent. It's something I can't describe. It's an emotional thing. And one more story happened to me. My father was in the hospital the last Pesach, and then he passed away in Chinatown. Don't ask me how he ended up in such a horrible hospital, but that's where his doctor was. And it was Erev Pesach, and my mother was going to stay with him she got an apartment across the street from NYU in Chinatown. And I woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning, I had cooked everything the night before, and I drove to the hospital. This is Erev Pesach. I left my 11 children at home, and I drove. I didn't even tell anyone that I was leaving the house, and I packed up everything for Pesach, and a whole Seder plate, the egg, and shankbom, the marach harosis, everything. And I didn't tell my parents I was coming to the hospital. And I show up there like 8 o'clock in the morning, and my mother's with my father. And they were like, "What are you doing here at Pesach? Who's making Pesach for you? You're in Manhattan. You have to go home." And I brought them everything for Pesach. And I remember standing at the edge of my father's bed, and I asked my father, Erev Pesach, the 4 questions. Tata, And then next Pesach, my father was gone, but I'll never forget how happy he was when I stood there asking him the 4 questions. My mother was like, my mother also like, she did, like, how did you think of asking him? I'm like, I'm not going to see him tonight, so I'm going to ask him the 4 questions now. And so now at my Seder, I ask the 4 questions. My husband asks the 4 questions. We all ask the 4 questions because we're asking God, Tata, God in heaven, I got to ask you these 4 questions. So don't let the children ask the 4 questions. You ask the 4 questions, and let the children also ask the 4 questions. But the 4 questions are for all of us to ask, because we are also children. They are also children. So people don't realize that. They're like, who's going to ask the 4 questions? The youngest son, the youngest child. But no, everyone should ask the 4 questions. But you can do it quickly. Like, we don't spend 4 hours in our home, everyone asking. The kids ask it out loud with all the fanfare. And then all the adults quietly say it. Tatach badir fragen de 4 kashas. We say it in Yiddish and Hebrew quietly, and we ask the 4 questions. And even the Rebbe would ask the 4 questions. The Lubavitcher Rebbe in Yiddish, they would hear the Rebbe saying it. Sorry, Jane, what do you want to say? Sorry.
Oh, no, I was going to say, does everybody separately say the 4 questions? This could take a very long time.
Or no, you sing it together. Or Jane.
Sing it all together.
Right. So I'll give you an example. Let's say we call upon 6 of our grandchildren. They all say it, because how could you not let them say it?
Say it together or separately?
Separately, because you want them to, it's it's the highlight of their night. They wait for it all.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying in our, let's say at our Seder, but then you have like, whatever, 30 adults. So we all hear everyone murmuring. It takes exactly 10 seconds. That's how quick you do it. But I'm saying, you hold your Haggadah and you quietly say it, and you preface it. By the way, it's a beautiful custom. You don't just say Manishtana. The Jewish mysticism explains, before you say Manishtana, you should say in whatever language, Father, I want to ask you the 4 questions. And at the end, you say, and Father, now I would like an answer. It's a custom to preface it and end it with these lines. So whether you say Tatechel Badif Fregen de Firkashes, or in Hebrew, Abba ani ratzah l'shal etcha et arba hakashiyot, hasheilot, whatever language, the custom is to preface it. Dad, I want to ask 4 questions, and you end off, and Dad, I'd like to have an answer now. I want to say something, that if you read the 4 questions, there's no answers given in the Haggadah, by the way. Where are the answers? You're asking the 4 questions, and then there's no answers. But that's the answers. In the questions are the answers, by the way. If you read the questions, the answers are within the questions. Because you wonder, I asked, no, give me an answer. And then it goes on. We were slaves in Egypt. Okay, so where are the answers? So let's quickly go through the 4 children and see what they ask and what the answer is. Would you like to do that?
Yeah.
Okay. We could do it quickly. But you know what? I think we should do the Afikomen, because we may not have time. So let me just quickly go with the Afikomen. The last child, I'm going to go backwards, okay? Because I want to address the Afikomen in case we run out of time. The last child, which is, hold on. Chacham, Rasha, Tam, She'ena Yodei Lishal. Okay? The last child is called the one who doesn't know how to ask. But it's not that he doesn't know how to ask. He's an apathetic child. He's an apathetic person. And by the way, the 4 children are not only 4 different types of children that sit at the Seder table or 4 types of Jews. It's 4 types that we have within ourselves. At times we're chacham, we're very wise. We're wise, we have our head on straight. At times you're contrary. You rebel a little bit. I don't want to do this. Why should I do it? Or I don't really believe in this. At times we are Tom, which is selfish, self-absorbed, egotistical, complete. It really means complete. Why? Because the complete person thinks they don't need anybody else. You know what they say, the self-made man or woman, what's the crime? That they worship themselves, their creator. I created myself, I worship myself. I say the self-made man, he worships his creator, which is himself. So that's the selfish child, the self-absorbed child, the egotistical child. What does God have to do with my life? I'm strong, I'm successful, I'm rich, I don't need anybody else. The 4 children. So at times, and then we're apathetic, at times we have all these mood swings. No one is perfect. We go through different cycles in our lives, different periods. So the 4 children of the Seder are really us, me, at different times in my life. It could also be 4 different types of people, different attitudes in life. And then the Lubavitcher Rebbe said something very powerful. There's a 5th child not mentioned in the Haggadah. Who is the 5th child? Anybody know? We have the wise, we have the contrary, we have the apathetic, we have the selfish, egotistical. Who's the 5th child? From the
Child who's not there.
Who?
No.
Go ahead.
Child who's not at the table.
Exactly. At least these 4 children, these 4 Jews, these 4 people are at the table. They're at the Seder. They may not agree with you. They may say, this is hocus pocus. I only came because I wanted to taste Antilles matzo ball soup. I don't believe in all this. Or they come because it's family. Or they come because their friends schlepped them. But it's a 5th child, a 5th person who doesn't even know it's Pesach and doesn't even come to the Seder. They don't know. They don't even know. They're disconnected. Or they ran away from it all. I don't need this in my life anymore. I don't want to be a Holocaust Jew. I don't want to hear about the pain and suffering of my people. So the Rebbe said there's a 5th Jew that's lost. They don't even know that it's Pesach. They're not at the table. There's no debate because they're not there. The mitzvah of Pesach is to bring that 5th child back home. So if you have a neighbor, a Jewish neighbor, a Jewish friend who says, Pesach, I haven't celebrated since my grandmother passed away 20 years ago. What do I need it for? Besides, I'm working. Make sure they come to your Seder. Make sure they're at the table. We have to bring back the 5th child to our table. And you know what? The 5th child might be me. I may not be in the mood of being there, and I'm not going to go. You have to make sure you're there. You have to make sure you're at the Seder table. Okay, so I want to end off with the last son, the last child. The last child says, At Pesach lo shenamar levid. Okay, what does he say? Look, I'm here. You guys mean well, but my heart is just not in it. It's boring. It doesn't really mean anything to me. I didn't grow up with this. Apathetic. He's apathetic. So what does the Haggadah say? What is the answer to this child that says, or this person says, listen, I'm here at the Seder, okay? But listen, this is not for me. I'm not inspired. I'm not inspired by your Kabbalistic insight. I'm not inspired by your mysticism. I'm not inspired by your matzo ball recipe or your brisket. Nothing can, your blintzes, they might be good, but listen, don't expect me to jump with happiness that I'm here. You're apathetic in life. You don't feel inspired. You feel bored. Bored with Judaism, bored with life, bored with yourself, bored with your family, bored with your friends. I don't know. Life is just not inspirational for me anymore. So what does the Haggadah say? At Pesach loy. You have to inspire that person. You have an obligation. You meet a person who has apathy in their lives. They could see that there's this bored with life. Try to inspire them. Try to excite them about something. Bring them back into feeling that life could be exciting and interesting. Like I told my mother, Mom, so bored. She said, boredom comes from within. You're bored? It's from within. Can't blame it on your surroundings. It's something inside of you that's causing the apathy, the boredom, the lack of inspiration. So yeah, we have to work on ourselves when it is us who's uninspired. But then when you see someone who's not, try to inspire them. Find a way through food, through entertainment, just find a way to inspire and make that person live life again to its fullest. That's what it means. This child who says, what do I need this for? But so now what did I want to do? I wanted to just quickly tie this into the afikomen, that at the very end of the Seder, we eat the afikomen. So afikomen is the piece of matzah that was broken, remember, from yachatz, and we take the smaller piece. Wait, the bigger piece of Shia, the bigger piece of the smaller piece of that, the bigger piece of the matzah, we break it into 5 pieces based on Kabbalah. There's a reason to. When you break the middle matzah, you take the bigger piece, you break it into 5 pieces, you put it in a bag that says afikomen, and either you hide it from the children or the children hide it from you. That's the custom. Find it later. And you cannot finish the Seder till you eat the afikomen. Okay? Now, afikomen is like the dessert. The custom is, the law is that after you eat that piece of matzah, you say grace after meals, you drink the last cup, and you don't eat after the afikomen. Why? So the Code of Jewish Law explains, because you want to savor the taste of the afikomen, which is matzah, which is the bread of faith. And I'll explain that in a minute. So the custom is you could drink after the afikomen, but people don't eat after the afikomen. We're not worried about hunger. We've been eating all night. That's the way the afikomen works. So first of all, what is afikomen? Afikomen means revealing that which is concealed. That's why we hide it. The afikomen is symbolic that at the end of the Seder, we hopefully have worked on ourselves and revealed within ourselves things that we need to confront, things that are bothering us, things that are Egypt coming from the word, Egypt comes from the word Meitzer Gvul, things that hold us back, things that enslave us. Hopefully by the end of the Seder, we have revealed that which is concealed within us. We've worked on ourselves to a certain point. Listen, therapy doesn't happen in one Seder night, but it's symbolic that we are starting to confront things in our lives. And now that we have revealed that which was concealed within us, pain, again, trauma, pain, abuse, anger, resentment, now, nirtza. Remember what we said? We say God has accepted our Haggadah. God has accepted our prayers, our Seder, but did we accept ourselves now? Now that we have kind of revealed within ourselves things that hold us back, can I now look at myself in the mirror and say, you know what? You're a good person. You deserve goodness in your life, because many times we feel, I don't deserve this. I'm not a good person. I didn't do good enough. I let my children down. I let my husband down. I let my parents down. I let my colleagues down. I'm a nobody. What am I? I'm a nobody. I'm a drop in the bucket. I'm one piece of sand in the ocean. I'm a drop of water in the ocean. We realize that we have value. So nirtza, now that you have revealed that which is concealed within yourself, that's what's holding us back. Now you could say to God, I deserve a good life. I have accepted myself for who I am, with my faults, with my fallacies, with my pain. I have accepted who I am. I'm ready to move forward. Because most of the time, you don't accept yourself. You don't love yourself. That's why no one loves you. If you don't love yourself, no one can love you because you exude dislike. If you don't love yourself, who will love you? You have to love yourself. Because if you love yourself, you will love others. If you don't show yourself self-love, you can't show love to anyone else because you don't know what it means. Love to you is a foreign object. If you cannot hug yourself, how could you hug anybody else? If you never gave yourself a hug, how could you hug another person? You don't even know what it means to hug. So you have to allow yourself to feel self-love and know you deserve everything in life. And if you accept yourself, you know God always accepts you, with all our flaws. That's why we break the matzah. That's why the afikomen is from the broken matzah. God is not looking for wholeness. God is not saying, Jane, Margaret, Diane, Freida, you got to be perfect, otherwise don't come to my Seder. If you're not dressed to the T's, don't come to my Seder. I don't need you here. I only want the hatzi-tatzis at my Seder table. Don't forget your diamond bracelets. God says, I want the brokenness in you. You're breaking the matzah to show life is not whole. There's always brokenness. And in that brokenness, we find wholeness. That's why the afikomen is a broken matzah. Why not put a beautiful whole matzah for the afikomen? Make it look beautiful. It's the afikomen. It's the highlight of the night. It's the dessert. Imagine I bring dessert, a smashed 7-layer cake. I say, everybody, this is dessert. They're like, ooh, I'm not eating that cake. But afikomen is a broken piece of matzah, right? Because in brokenness, when you there's nowhere left to go, when you confront your brokenness, that's when you can mend. You hide your brokenness, you can never mend. I'm not broken. I'm the happiest person in the world, not. So that's the story of the Seder. You break a matzah. And Jane said, the minute they start pouring on the tablecloth, you know the Seder began. Right? Exactly. Whenever someone comes to my Shabbos table, and most of my own children, and they pour grape juice on my tablecloth, I always say Mazel Tov. Mazel Tov. It's a good sign. You know why? You're alive. Only robots don't spill. Human beings spill. Human beings break things. And that's why when we break a plate, like Shabbos, Yom Tov, when we're eating, or even during the week, whenever something breaks in our house, my husband and I, you could hear us from different parts of the house. Mazel Tov. That's why you break a glass of chuppah, to show that even when you break a dish, it's Mazel Tov. Because life is not about perfection. Life is about, you'll break a glass, and you'll break a glass by your own wedding too. And you'll know just at that moment under the chuppah, you had a tremendous love for your spouse. Remember, when he or she breaks a glass from your favorite china, it's also Mazel Tov. Because you broke a glass under the chuppah to remind you life will have brokenness, but you have to say Mazel Tov. You have to say Mazel Tov. And this is Pesach. Pesach has such a beauty to it, such a strength. If you could tap into that, wow, we give each other a pep talk. And I want to wish everybody that your Pesach should be liberating, joyous, happy, exciting, and everyone should feel that you deserve the best, you are the best, and freedom shall reign.